In this episode, I have Cooper Fitzgerald from Eat Brave, a modern breakfast for busy humans, talking about how to make your busy lifestyle easier. So Eat Brave is a company that offers a line of overnight oats. They're absolutely delicious, they're easy to make, and it makes your day a little bit more efficient in terms of picking food. For anyone out there that has a super busy lifestyle, you get it. There's less margin for error. So Cooper and I, we're here to help you out. We're going to talk about some strategies for conquering the day, how to build smart habits, including eating habits, and much more. Hope you enjoy this one.
The Prehab audio experience will teach you how to take control of your health through knowledge by optimizing performance, promoting longevity, and keeping your movement system in tune. Welcome to your host, the Prehab Guys.
Today, I have Cooper Fitzgerald here from Brave, a modern breakfast for busy humans. Today, we're going to be talking about how to manage busy lifestyles and more. Thanks for coming on the show, Cooper.
Greg, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, we've been having a hard time trying to get this one scheduled, but we finally made it happen. So I'm glad to have you here. Please tell me more about yourself as well as Brave.
Absolutely. So a little background on myself. I grew up in Maine. I lived in Colorado for 6 years, including college and a couple of years afterwards, and I now live in Brooklyn. We started Brave 2 years ago now, and kind of in its most recent iteration, it's been about 6 months. So, we're a young company, and basically Brave is as you said, modern breakfast for busy humans, and that means a few different things for us. So Brave, if you've heard of overnight oats, it's essentially, to kind of distill it into something that's really easy to understand, it's overnight oats kind of souped up. So the base of each breakfast is chia seeds, oats, and hemp hearts. And that for us combines protein, fiber, healthy fats, and enough calories to keep whoever eats this full until lunch. So that's a primary component of Brave, is that base and keeping you full till lunch. We then add nuts, fruit, and spices to create 3 flavors. There's no added sugar. There's no added, BS. You can pronounce every single ingredient on the label. Each packet has 20 grams of protein. So it should be a full breakfast, get you enough protein and all the rest to, keep you fueled and focused until lunch. We started Brave really out of a need for a breakfast that would fit our specific needs. So we started Brave, like I said, 2 years ago, myself and my 2 brothers. At the time, I was living in Denver, Colorado. My brother Alex was here in New York, and then my brother Ryan was in Portland, Maine. We're all super busy and really active guys. Ryan's super into rock climbing. Alex loves boxing. I'm very into jiu-jitsu. So, we were staying busy and needed a lot of food to keep us fueled throughout the day. So what we were looking for from a breakfast perspective was something that was quick to make. And what we found in our old routine is every single breakfast that would keep us fueled and focused until lunch, was big enough with the right protein and ingredients and all the rest, required us waking up earlier in the morning, 20 to 30 minutes earlier to make an omelet or whatever else you were making, which we really didn't want to do. We either wanted to sleep in or we wanted to wake up and get a workout in, but we found that breakfast and making breakfast in the morning was really limiting to our routine. So we started making overnight oats the night before, and the beauty of it is exactly that. You make it the night before, you pour the mixture into a jar or a bowl, whatever you have at the house, you add milk, and then overnight, the mixture absorbs the liquid, and in the morning, it's completely cooked and ready to eat, so you can just grab it and go for whatever you're doing. I was working at a fitness software company at the time, and I started making this kind of mixture for myself, and then I would bring it to work, and people were asking me, what is this bizarre looking thing that you're eating every day? As you can imagine, people at that company were super into health and fitness as well. So it nailed their need for breakfast that was healthy and quick to make. So that was really the validation we needed, working there, and then us all eating it in our own routines, and then me starting to share it with my coworkers, it kind of gave us the validation that, like, look, this is something that people are in need of. People are bored with their current breakfast routine. Their current breakfasts aren't hitting everything from a time saving and nutrition component. So from there, we started doing farmers markets, and then eventually it slowly morphed into this. And here we are now, and it's been going really well. So we're incredibly excited about Brave.
That's awesome. I love that story because you guys are just filling a void. And I mean, I can speak for myself. So, busy lifestyle. I try to wake up early in the morning and give myself a little bit of time. I may not do it 7 days a week, but then, there are days where I just get out of bed and I roll right into it. And trying to make time for a good breakfast, you got to commit to it. And so I just decided to just completely cut it out. And now I do intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
But when I do eat,
for yourself here, Greg,
go ahead.
But part of what I love about Brave is when you make it the night before, you sort of check one more thing off the list, and it feels like you get this little internal victory, dopamine rush, whatever it is, the night before, just knowing like, okay, I've already done myself a favor tomorrow, so I'm good. You can kind of go to bed knowing that tomorrow morning will be a little bit easier because breakfast is already taken care of.
Yeah, that's honestly one of my favorite pieces of advice to give to people that feel like they have a hard time being a morning person or trying to transition to, I want to accomplish a little bit more in the morning. I want to become a morning person. It's honestly just preparation at night. So I remember, like, even when I was a student, I was getting ready for clinicals. It was like, okay, I'm going to map out exactly what I'm going to wear for work tomorrow. I'm going to have my bag prepped. I'll prep my lunch and my food so that all I need to do to be that much more successful is just get up on time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting the right morning routine is a lot about what you do the night before and just setting yourself up for success. And, you can carry that lesson into many different aspects of life, but it's definitely true for the morning routine. You can't expect yourself to wake up at 6 a.m., which you did this morning, because we're talking at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and expect to be, ready to rock and roll if you haven't done any of the prep work the night before. So, yeah, I mean, setting yourself up with your workout clothes, or your clothes for work, breakfast, coffee ready, whatever it is, obviously you want to kind of check a couple of those things off the night before.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a guess that you guys are, you and your brothers, you have to be morning persons. I mean, there had to be some early start in the mornings that eventually, this problem came up where you weren't having a great breakfast. And I mean, could you share some stories about were you guys using different forms of energy, let's say? So not really good and clean overnight oats, but what else were you guys using in the past before you had this option that you guys were looking at one another and saying, all right, this isn't working for us?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question, because I feel like a lot of people, part of the thing around breakfast is people eat sort of a limited number of types of breakfast, as opposed to lunch where there's a lot of different variation, and especially around dinner, but people kind of stick with the same breakfast routine, and oftentimes it kind of leaves them unsatisfied. And that's the case for us as well. So, I've always been an oatmeal guy. I love oatmeal. The problem that I found with oatmeal was always that I would eat it, around 7 or 8 a.m., depending on the day and, what I was doing during the day. But 2 hours later, I would be starving. I would have that sort of hunger where your stomach hurts. And I was always super confused because I would have, multiple packs of oatmeal, and I'd toss some nut butter in there. I was eating 500-600 calories, but it just was not sustaining me. Part of the issue there is lack of protein, and then just too much sugar. And a lot of oatmeal products, especially that come in packets, are ladled with sugar. They don't have the protein that you need to keep you full. And also a couple other components there would be fiber and healthy fats. So my breakfast routine prior to Brave was oatmeal, like it is for a lot of people, but it just was not sustaining me.
Yeah, and then I'm curious because you guys are sort of in the oatmeal business, so I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit. What
Yeah.
is it? Can you shed light on just the process of like overnight oats? For like because some people you have to add chia seeds the night before, or you could add chia seeds right then and there. Like you guys have
Mm,
perfected sort of the ingredients and like you mentioned it earlier that it cooks it or you hear some people talk about okay the big benefit of oatmeal is you're getting your soluble fiber versus insoluble fiber. If you're
right,
able to shed
right.
any light on that, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, so Nordic countries have been doing what's called muesli for a long time, and it's essentially the same concept. And people make a lot of different claims around, you're not having to pour boiling hot water, so it preserves the nutrients if you just soak it overnight in cold milk or water. I'm not a nutrition expert, so I'm not going to claim that that's the case. But basically, the easiest way to understand this is what's absorbing liquid in the case of Brave is oats and chia seeds. If you've ever had an experience in chia seeds, and anyone at home can do this, put a tablespoon of chia seeds in a cup, add a quarter cup of water, and an hour and a half later, you're going to have this sort of gelatinous mixture because there's this film around the chia seed that actually absorbs liquid overnight. And, it doesn't have to be overnight. It can be within an hour and a half. And the same goes for the oats. So those two things are really what's absorbing and cooking, for lack of a better term, overnight. The other things that happen, obviously, is, we have dried fruit in there, so that those sort of reconstitute and become plump. And then, the mixture just sort of softens as a whole.
I love it. I already feel that much better and smarter about when I go to eat this stuff. So yeah, I mean it's delicious. Like I can't speak high enough about it. We'll include a discount in our show notes for everyone that's tuning in. But this stuff is so easy to travel with, and that's what I want to transition to is like managing busy lifestyles because nutrition
Yeah.
is one aspect of it, but then there's definitely other aspects of it. So I'll be happy to hear sort of how you and your brothers handle it. I can shed some light on sort of how I handle it from a nutrition standpoint and more, but this stuff is very easy. It's literally just a packet. And I think the hardest decision that you have to make is what flavor are you going to pick and what type of milk are you going to use? Because it's very simple. Pour it in a jar, add the milk, throw it in the fridge, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And, a lot of the times I've always been into routines, and I sort of didn't know on an intellectual level why routines worked for me. But, everybody has probably heard about the benefits of routine, and just to sort of distill what the benefits are of a routine, especially, or obviously they have to be a healthy routine, is once a routine becomes habit, it requires very little in the way of mental energy to execute. So when you're trying to make a routine habit, you're having to have this sort of decision-making process in your head, and that is tiring, and oftentimes you trip yourself up. But once you sort of make something a habit, and there's a lot of different studies out there as to how long it takes something to actually become a habit. And I don't actually have an opinion on that, but what I do know is once something does become a habit, whether it takes a week or 2 weeks or a month, then it becomes second nature, and it's just sort of like you're doing it because that's what you do. And there's absolutely no sort of decision processing in your head. It's just, here's what I'm doing, so now I'm going to do it. And part of why Brave is so helpful with routines, and especially around nighttime routine and morning routine, is because a lot of the times people are spending what could be hours on, working out in the morning or meditating or taking your dog for a walk or hanging out with your girlfriend or boyfriend or wife or husband or your kids or whatever else. They're spending kind of rushing around in the morning, making breakfast, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, getting your kids out the door. there's a lot to do in the morning. So you want to minimize what goes on in the morning. And part of the beauty of Brave is, again, breakfast is already made. So you can kind of maximize that morning routine with kind of checking something else off of the list.
I couldn't agree more, because food it's a necessity, right? It's no matter what, that morning routine. Yes, you could maybe get up in the morning and meditate, but you could still get by during the day if you didn't meditate, versus your day is going to be a little bit more challenging if you're trying to skip out on food and you're trying to skip that step. And I think where most people run into trouble with their nutrition, and it's only February, so we're coming off of New Year's resolutions, and okay, we're talking about this routine. You'll hear people throw out, all right, maybe it takes a month, 30 days or so to lock in a routine, because you're right, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It requires a little bit more mental energy for the processing and the planning, and there can be frustrating times at certain points. But okay, now it's February. Where are people trying to pick up off of with their goals? And I think most people run into issues with their nutrition when they don't plan. And then those hormones kick in, different things happen in the body that trigger the stimulus to want to eat. And then you get cravings. And then that's when we often make bad decisions about our food,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I, as sort of a rule of thumb, never let myself get too hungry. I've been playing around with intermittent fasting, so it's kind of a different story, but I did that partially because I wanted to get more comfortable with being hungry. But I'm the type of person that, if I'm too hungry, and I walk by a baked good, I mean, it's all over. Like, my decision making is totally gone if I'm too hungry. I'm eating whatever in front of me. So you really want to plan and try and not have that happen, obviously. So yeah, totally agree.
And so this past month, my wife and I, we did full plant-based. And if we want to talk about cravings and walking by certain things, it was like my taste buds and my nose were that much more sensitive to the things that I wasn't eating. Like, I remember we were up in San Francisco, and we walked by like an ice cream shop or something, and they were making waffles. And I felt like my dog, because I could smell the store from 500 feet away. And it was like, where is this coming from? And what is that smell? So the cravings are a real thing. So with that being said, if you're busy dealing with cravings and you don't have oatmeal, what are some of your go-tos? So you mentioned fasting. So I'm curious, how long are you fasting? And are you doing that 7 days a week? What's sort of your setup?
Yeah, I think so. Just to go back to routines, and this is going to lead into fasting, because fasting is part of my routine or at least it has been for the past month. I think you need to give yourself flexibility around routines. I by no means eat Brave 7 days a week. I would get totally burnt out on it, and it's just not sustainable. And I'm by no means above a bacon, egg, and cheese or huevos rancheros or anything else. So give yourself a break on routines. It doesn't need to be every day. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get it. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's not going to happen. So you can kind of let that go up front. As far as intermittent fasting goes, I had heard enough smart people talk about intermittent fasting that I kind of knew something had to be up with it that was beneficial. People like Tim Ferriss, Peter Attia, these guys were and are incredibly smart. They're people that I listen to and take advice from. And I was always hesitant to get into intermittent fasting because I have a hangry problem. And if I'm hungry, people don't want to be around me. And I was just wanting to preserve my relationship with my girlfriend and my other friends. So I didn't really get into intermittent fasting until January. And I have really loved it. I mean, there's a plethora of benefits that I've noticed, from cognitive ability and energy levels. Those were my primary kind of things that I wanted to play around with. My sleep has also improved. And, I was thinking to myself, like, hey, isn't intermittent fasting going to kind of be bad for a breakfast business? And, we have other products in the pipeline, but for now, we're a breakfast business. So if people aren't eating breakfast, isn't that an issue? And what I realized was, no, it's actually not. And the way I sort of incorporate Brave into my routine is I will fast generally for 14 to 16 hours. So let's say I stop eating around 10 p.m. I won't eat again until maybe 12 or 1 p.m. the next day. And I'll break that fast with just a normal lunch, whether it's like a sandwich or a grain bowl, whatever it is, salad, whatever I'm eating for lunch that day. And then in the mid-afternoon, let's say around 3 or 4, I'll then have Brave. And what I've learned from intermittent fasting is you need to pack meal-sized snacks because you're going to try and have to fit in the same amount of calories in a smaller window. So pack more snacks than you think you need. And Brave, to me, is the perfect sort of bridge between lunch and dinner. It's big enough to keep you sustained until dinner. And, in my mind, it's obviously delicious and has all the nutritional benefits that we've been through. So that's the sort of way I've been incorporating Brave into my intermittent fasting routine. And I've been really enjoying it. It's not something I do every single day. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to do it, but I've been enjoying playing around with it for the time being.
That's awesome. Congrats. Yeah, I'm on a very similar schedule. I fast. My last meal is around 10. I try to make it to somewhere between 12 and 2. And it all goes into planning. So days that I'm out of the apartment and I'm going to work or I'm at the clinic, I am definitely packing a ton of food. You hit it right on the nail. And especially if I'm training, because I'll train at the end of my fast sometimes, and then right after that it's like, all right, I'm ready to break this fast. And for me, and anyone that's tuning in, if you like breakfast, like, I think that's the best part is breakfast. You don't have to eat breakfast at breakfast. You can eat breakfast whenever you want. I grew up on having breakfast foods at dinner. So, and then also you really brought up a good point. I loved how you mentioned the breakfast sandwich, bacon, egg, and cheese or something. I think following the 85% rule it's a really good rule. So 100% of the time, you're perfect. 0% of the time, you're not making any mistakes or not treating yourself. That's really hard to sustain. And I think if you follow the 85% rule with your busy lifestyle, you're going to have a lot more success. So that's where you just build in treating yourself. I think those are all really good points. All right, Cooper. So I'd love to wrap this up. We ask everyone that joins us, what does prehab mean to you? And then ultimately, how does Brave help you with meeting your prehab goals? And you've mentioned this in the past, why Brave? I know that you guys have a few bullet points about that, and I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, Brave is not going to be perfect for every single person. Obviously, people are built differently. They require different nutrition based on activity level and genetics and socioeconomic status. So I'm by no means saying Brave is perfect for every single person, but if you're a person who, number one, cares about nutrition, the first thing you do when you look at a product is you flip it over and check out the ingredients, check out the nutrition panel. Brave is going to be for you. If you require a fair amount of food to stay full from breakfast to lunch, Brave is definitely for you. And if you're someone who wants to save time in the morning and cares about either sleeping in or meditating in the morning, getting a workout in, whatever it is that you want to do in the morning that you haven't been able to because you're just pressed for time, Brave is definitely for you as well. So yeah, what prehab means to me is just, as we talked about, staying on top of things and planning ahead. I'm somebody who's very into exercise. I mentioned jiu-jitsu, also weightlifting and boxing, cross training. I'm very into mobility, and the example that comes to mind for me around prehab is, I work from home a fair amount. Obviously, I run Brave, so I work out of a co-working space and home a lot. And when I'm working, oftentimes I'm in a squatted position working on hip mobility, and that's the sort of thing that like everybody could do. It's staying on top of mobility and making sure injuries aren't happening. So that's what it sort of means to me. And I've been a big fan of your guys for a long time, so I'm just super excited to have been on the podcast, and I love to hear that you guys are enjoying Brave.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. I truly appreciate it. I totally get where you're coming from. When you run your own business and you're working more from home, you got to stay moving, and sitting all day is not going to cut it. So I love that you're incorporating different positions. For everyone that's tuning in, if you have not tried out these overnight oats, you got to get your hands on them. We can't recommend them enough. There's going to be a link in the show notes. Also, if you check out their website, you can just use our discount code in all caps. It's Prehab Guys with an S at the end, for 20% off on your order. Cooper, thanks again for coming on the show. Truly appreciate it. And thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks for listening to this podcast with Cooper and I. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. It would mean the absolute world to us. Also, if you want to check out some of these Eat Brave overnight oats, head on down to the show notes. You're going to find a link there, and that's where you're going to be able to save 20% off on your first order. If you're listening to this podcast, take a photo, take a screenshot, post it on social media, tag us as well as the Prehab Audio Experience, and we'll be happy to share it. All right, take care.